Okay. Again, thank you so much for joining me today and for taking time to prepare for 2017 StarTalk program site visits. The goals for our webinar today are listed here on this slide. First of all, we hope that through our conversation, you will be able to understand and explain the important purpose of the site visit in StarTalk program development. And we hope that you can also feel comfortable understanding and being able to describe your role as a site visitor, and can state and kind of have a good sense of how the site visit look-fors are used within the context of the site visit. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, we hope that you have a good sense of what you need to do in order to prepare well for each site visit and how to find the resources that you need for that preparation. This year is our 10th year in StarTalk summer programs, and we have 140 programs that have received grants for the 2017 program year. 28 of those 140 programs are brand new programs. And among the 140 programs, we have 26 teacher programs this year, 79 student programs, and 23 combination programs. Our combination programs typically have a teacher program that comes first, and teachers are prepared to then have a field experience, micro-teaching experience within the student program. For our combination programs, we really look for mutual benefit across the programs to participants. We also this year are funding 12 infrastructure projects, and we encourage you to learn about the special nature of those infrastructure projects through the StarTalk website and through your engagement with team leaders and other site visitors this year. So there are three primary goals of StarTalk, which I referenced is now in its 10th year. First of all, it's helpful for you to be aware that StarTalk is funded through the National Security Agency with Department of Defense spending, and it's managed by the National Foreign Language Center at the University of Maryland College Park campus. The primary goals of StarTalk are first to increase the supply of teachers and the quality of those teachers, also to significantly increase the number of students who are enrolled in the learning of our 11 critical languages, and also to increase the supply of effective professional learning and curricular resources to support the teaching and learning of our 11 strategic languages. StarTalk is really a collaboration for growth, and making progress toward our program goals requires mindful focus, alignment, and collaboration. And we thank you in advance for your contributions to our assigned site visit teams. We really hope that you will approach your work with mindful attention to looking for observational evidence and providing feedback in ways that support growth. The site visit supports continuous improvement through targeted interviews, classroom observations, feedback, and reflection. And these two quotations on this slide really capture what we're all about. That it's not just the program experience, but it's really paying attention to the efficacy of that experience and setting some goals based on those reflections for continuous improvement. And we've really tried to facilitate and foster a community that's welcomed a growth mindset, that's open to feedback, and is willing to really look at problems of practice and be thought partners in how we can approach those problems within our programs, but also across programs. And your role as a site visitor is really important in contributing to that climate and culture for growth. The site visit is part of a cycle of professional practice that starts with a program's proposal and extends all the way through a final report. This whole cycle is designed to be focused and aligned for learning within our programs. And through this cycle, programs are asked to set learning goals, to establish their plans for learning, to facilitate and check for learning, reflecting on their progress and the progress of their participants, and making adjustments to their practice based on feedback. The site visit is a time in the cycle to pause. It's a time for observation, reflection, and feedback. And it really helps us to assess the degree of alignment between the program as it was proposed in the proposal and the program as it was actually implemented in practice. So our site visit teams on the ground focus on providing high leverage feedback, and with that feedback, providing realistic short and long-term recommendations. The recommendations that a site visit team makes to the program transfer directly into the program's final report and require a response within their future proposals if they wish to seek continuation funding for the following year. Teachers in STARTALK programs are asked to facilitate learning through 6 research-based best practices. And as a site visitor, you're going to be asked to please look for evidence of the STARTALK-Endorsed principles for effective teaching and learning in action. Within our teacher education programs, the site visit teams are looking for how the program is preparing teacher participants to understand and apply these principles in their practice. And within our student programs, we're really looking for effective implementation of these practices. We recognize that all of these practices fall on a continuum of professional learning, and we're all in that work of learning together about how to realize these goals as a community. Within STARTALK, we target learning that's aligned with ACTFL's World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages, with the Necessful ACTFL Can-Do statements, and also with the TEL project framework in the Teacher Effectiveness for Language Learning Can-Do descriptors for teacher practice. Dessa, I'm glad that you're here with us today. You'll be very familiar with all of these frameworks, as I know, Betsy, you are as well. As a site visitor, it's important to not only be familiar with the STARTALK principles, but also to be intimately familiar with these professional frameworks for student learning. This year in STARTALK, we're emphasizing teaching and learning environments that lead to greater learner independence with their language and to transfer of the skills learned in the classroom to being able to use those skills outside of the classroom. The framework that we're using to support this learner-centered approach and process is called the Gradual Release of Responsibility, or we refer to it often, and others do as well, as GRR. The framework was designed by Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry of San Diego State University, and it invites us to really pay attention to who's doing the work of learning in the classroom within both teacher and student programs. And as you participate in site visits this year, we ask you to please look for evidence of this shift from teaching to learning and from modeling by the teacher to independent practice with really rich opportunities for group work and access to feedback along the way. It's often referred to as the I do, we do together, you do it in groups, you do it alone approach. And it's that gradual transition from teacher-centered modeling to student language and intercultural skill application. All of our StarTalk programs also use a backward design approach to planning for learning within their program. And that means starting with really clear and measurable learning targets, and then deciding how participants will demonstrate their learning through performance assessments. And then finally, planning those teaching and learning experiences that will prepare participants for success. All of our StarTalk teacher and student program curriculum templates are designed to support planning for learning through that backward design, or starting with the end in line process. And stage 3 of this process is where programs really are asked to look at that gradual release of responsibility model, from what teacher to learner, and from rich input to meaningful, independent, and transferable performance output of learning. This year, if you're a continuing site visitor, it's important to be aware of a shift in our teacher program curriculum template. Stage 3 of the teacher program curriculum template this year has been redesigned to kind of integrate the gradual release of responsibility model. For each of the TEL project framework criteria statements that a program identifies within stage 1 of their curriculum, programs are asked to plan this progression of learning that will require teachers to plan for and to check for learning through how participants will acquire, process, apply, and reflect on their learning. And for each step of this progression, they're asked to identify that formative check for learning. So if you're assigned to be participating on a site visit this summer to a teacher program, please be prepared to look for evidence of this process in practice. Our site visit report list of LookFors for teacher programs now includes looking for evidence of each of these stages. In addition to the curriculum template, student programs are required to use backward design to unpack their program level learning targets into a logical sequence of lesson level can-do statements. So they're taking their can-do statements from their curriculum and really unpacking them within the StarTalk Learning Plan template to plan for learning for every day of their program. Programs use this template to also plan for differentiation and for post-lesson reflection. You will, at the time of the site visit, have access to the program's learning plans from day 1 of the program, but with a special focus on the learning plans from the day prior, day of, and day to follow the site visit classroom observations. This will be helpful as you're looking for evidence of the StarTalk principles in the planning process and also within classroom practice. It gives you that sense of continuum of learning for not just that moment of time that's reflected in the site visit, but kind of a peek into what happened the day before and what is planned for the following day. The team leaders on the site visit team will be responsible for requesting access to these learning plans for the site visit team. I referenced earlier, and it's really important to stress that the site visit day is just one day of many that make up the whole of a StarTalk program experience. And we really need to honor the effort and hard work of each of our programs as we approach the work of the site visit. Site visit teams really maximize the value of this limited time with the program by focusing on a list of look-fors that they use during interviews, classroom observations, and the review of program curricula and learning plans. The observational data that you gather as a site visit team is then used to identify priority areas for feedback, along with that short and long-term list of recommendations that you decide to share with the program for continuous improvement. It's the team leader's job to facilitate a debriefing with the site visit team and program leaders to share the team's findings and to discuss strategies and also resources for growth. Recommendations that are shared at the time of the site visit will then be documented within a site visit report, which is sent to both the program and to STARTALK Central. STARTALK program directors are also invited to share their reflections and response to this formal site visit report with STARTALK. It's important as a site visitor to become familiar with the teacher and student program LookFors, and also the narrative questions that are used to focus the site visit debrief and report. These questions address program management, instructional practices, the program's responsiveness to past feedback, and both short and long-term recommendations for improvement. In 2017, STARTALK has funded 23 programs that offer a combined teacher and student program. Site visit teams are going to, within the context of a combination program, really assess the degree to which the programs are integrated for the mutual benefit of teachers and students. Question 7 asks you to reflect on that mutual benefit. It's helpful to know, if you're visiting a combination program, that separate site visit reports are drafted for the combined teacher and student programs, but they will not be finalized and submitted until both programs have been observed, so that question 7 can be answered. The responses to questions 8 and 9 are optional. The responses are not optional, but the responses are used only internally by STARTALK to identify effective practices and resources and to address any budget-related issues or concerns. Your answers to these questions will not be shared directly with the program. For each of the program LookFors that you're going to have a list of LookFors for both teacher and student programs, you're going to be rating the items. Data on the degree to which these practices are evidenced is shared with STARTALK Central and is also used by you, the site visit team members, to really hone in and determine the highest leverage areas for feedback and recommendations that you're going to share during the debrief. In the past, this was a site visit checklist, and we walked through each individual look for as an item to discuss with the programs. We no longer do that. It's for site visit team and STARTALK Central use only. We use this within STARTALK Central purposes to get a sense of the practices that more programs are struggling with overall, to determine our professional learning agenda and potential future conference sessions as part of our spring and fall conferences. It's really important to become familiar with the LookFors and the nuances of this rating scale. So for example, you're going to be looking for the degree to which the program is dedicating attention to teaching in the target language with comprehensible input, one of our STARTALK principles. When you're looking for that in classroom observations, you're going to be rating that with either agree, which means you saw it directly, or there's solid anecdotal evidence that it's happening based on the curriculum, the learning plans, what you hear the kids say and do, etc. Or not yet, which means you saw it, but not to the extent that it should be expected, or it's inconsistent. In one classroom, you see it reflected, but in the other 1 or 2 classrooms, it's really still in development, or you see teachers falling back to English. Or you didn't observe it, meaning it should have been present and wasn't observed, period. And then the final rating is important to understand, not intended to be part of the program. In all of our programs, the example I shared, target language use, should be a part of the program. But for example, if you're visiting a teacher program and the look for is related to, let me think of the use of authentic materials, the adapted use of authentic materials, and the teacher program is really focused on developing future teacher leaders, that may not have been intended within their proposal as a learning outcome of their program. So this gives you the option to rate that in that manner. Site visit interviews. This is one of my favorite elements of the site visit experience. Excuse me for one moment. So in addition to classroom observations, you as a site visit team are going to be conducting formal interviews with the program director, instructors, and participants. Please remember to follow protocols and guidelines when conducting the interviews, and the team leader will really take responsibility for taking the lead with this. They'll determine how to process interviews if there are multiple classroom environments or many teachers you need to interview. And we ask that you use the interview questions and not vary from those questions. Even as tempting as it might be, we need consistent data and to honor our timelines for this process. We encourage you to take active notes during the interviews, especially of things that you think may be relevant to feedback to offer the program at the end of the day. And integrate that interview data in your notes during the debrief to inform final recommendations. Please remember to maintain the confidentiality of respondents during the interview, and the team leader will assist with that. But it's important to share with the teachers and the students as you're interviewing them that you won't share what was said by whom, but you'll share overall anecdotal messaging that you heard over the course of all of the interviews during the day. Make sure to bring your site visit guide with you to have access to the list of interview questions and follow your team leader's guidance with regard to site visit interview facilitation. Now, the important stuff. It's all important, but what you may want to know and be anxious to know more about: logistics. First of all, if you're a returning site visitor, it's helpful to be aware that we have a new travel agency. We're shifting from working with Globetrotter Travel to work with Omega Travel. So you will be getting information on how to contact Omega and when and how that new process will work very soon, if not already. I need to also share that while last year we were able to pay for hotel expenses in advance, and team leaders and site visitors did not need to submit, pay and then submit for reimbursement, we had issues with our credit card being hacked 3 or 4 times over the course of last summer, and it was very problematic. So we do need to ask everyone this year to please pay for your own hotel stays and seek reimbursement. And we'll do our best to process those claims as quickly as possible within the university system and protocol. Your STARTALK liaison is going to contact you very soon with your draft itinerary for the summer. And they are going to need this document to create an official travel authorization form with the University of Maryland. That's our fiscal agent for STARTALK. Behind the scenes, you will all be assigned a STARTALK liaison who will submit travel authorizations to the university. When that's approved, they will contact you, and you will then be able to book your travel with our new agent, Omega. At this point, we encourage you to please contact your team leader if they have not already contacted you, and to discuss the logistics of each of your planned trips this summer. That way you will be sure to book a hotel in the same, book a room in the same hotel that your team leader is planning to stay. Your contact information along with your bio should be visible on the site visit summary page in SOFI, our online information system. But to be on the safe side, it's not a bad idea to share your contact information with your team leader for each program site visit so that you can contact each other directly while you're traveling. And then, and only once you've kind of communicated with your team leader, can you contact Omega using the instructions that your liaison will send you and book your site visit travel plans. If you have any follow-up questions on this, there are going to be two resources to address your questions. One, your StarTalk Central Liaison, and two, your site visitor guide that will be available hopefully on our website. The updated guide will be posted tomorrow, and I believe you may be receiving one in the mail as well. The site visit team, as far as preparation for the site visit, is responsible for being familiar with the program in advance of your arrival on site. Careful review of the program's proposal, curriculum, and recommendations from past site visits provides you with a really meaningful context through which to look for evidence of the StarTalk principles and growth. And it's a really important dimension of our being responsive to the hard work that our programs are all doing to make learning possible. We owe them the courtesy of being fully aware of the work they're doing before we arrive on site. The site visit team leader will host a meeting with the site visit team either the morning of the site visit over breakfast, or if it's possible and preferable, the night before if everyone has arrived on time. And during that meeting, they will share additional background information from their work with the program this year. They'll walk through plans for the day and maybe call out special areas for attention that the program has identified that they'd like the site visit team to pay attention to, or that the site visit team leader has identified as kind of something to be aware of and to focus on. So how does the site visit itself typically play out? Every site visit starts with a program overview and an interview with the program director. Then during the course of the day of the site visit, you will be actively involved in classroom observations. That may be a single classroom that you're observing for a more extended period of time, or in some of our larger programs, there may be 6 or 8 classrooms, and the site visit team may have to split up to facilitate observations in multiple learning environments. It's always really important to take really targeted notes during your observations of areas of strength and areas for development so that you can share out with the site visit team quickly during the debrief at the end of the day. You'll also be conducting interviews with the lead instructor, with classroom instructors and participants, whether they're teacher participants or student learners. And then at the end of the day, after you've completed your interviews and classroom observations, the site visit team will come together in a private, quiet workspace and first reflect on your own notes, then share observations using the site visit LookFors list and rating scales, and then defining those areas for feedback that you'll use in your debriefing with the program director. Some programs invite their instructional leads to participate in that debriefing. Others do not. And oftentimes that's a case-by-case in-the-moment decision by the program director in consultation with the team leader, depending on the nature of the feedback that the site visit team might be providing. And then finally, the site visit report is developed, and nothing in the site visit report that's constructive feedback can be documented if it has not been discussed with the program director during the debrief. I've already shared the recommendations to please take really targeted notes, and everybody kind of does this differently. You can do it on an iPad, you can do it in a notebook, but coming up with your own little shorthand for coding things may be helpful. I do a plus for areas of strength, delta for areas for development, and an asterisk for highlights. Um, Remember that you can see evidence, you can also hear evidence and read evidence. You have the options of looking at the learning plans, looking at the proposal, looking at the curriculum template, etc. So eyes, ears, and fully engaged in getting all evidence that you can during that short time we're on site. Your role as a site visitor is to provide language, cultural, and pedagogical expertise as needed and as an asset to the site visit team. We try to the best of our ability to have a member of the team who's familiar with or speaks the target language and culture and is aware of the culture, paired with pedagogical experts, teacher educator experts. That's not always possible, but that's usually our goal. It's important as a site visitor to be aware of protocol related to feedback and communication with classroom teachers. Even team leaders may not provide direct feedback to a classroom teacher, and this is a hard thing. Everyone is really on kind of heightened awareness and wanting to perform well during the site visit, and younger teachers in particular, they're like, what do you think? How did it go? I'm nervous. And they're looking for you to say something. And our kind of party line is, thank you so much. You're working so hard. And, it was our pleasure to have the privilege of observing your program today. And the feedback then is relayed through the team leader to the program director at the end of the day. And finally, it's important to remember to support the team leader through this process as they take the lead in facilitating the site visit. The site visitor responsibilities are clearly listed and referenced in the site visit team leader guides. And again, I'm going to show you how to access that information in just a moment. And we'd encourage you to please read through that and in preparation for your summer, but also I often just take a look at it going into each site visit as a way to ground myself in the work. Review these resources and contact your team leader or StarTalk Central if you have any questions. So how do you find these resources? The critical resource is to look for that team leader site visitor guide. And if you go to the StarTalk website, you'll see that there's a search resources tab. And so you hit on that tab, and when you do so, this top hyperlink says Program Administration and Consultant Resources. If you click there, it will take you to a page, and at the bottom of that page, you'll see Consultant Resources and the Team Leader Site Visitor Guide, the interview questions, the list of look-fors for both student and teacher programs, along with the ever-important travel reimbursement form and invoicing template can be found there. I've also shared the direct hyperlink, and we'll post these slides online, but I wanted to make sure you know how to access these resources. Again, a reminder, if you click on the site visitor guide today, it may still be last year's site visitor guide. My understanding is that the updated guide should be posted by the end of the week for sure, and hopefully by tomorrow morning. So we thank you in advance for your valuable role as a site visitor in support of StarTalk program outcomes. And I know from my days as a site visitor, I felt like I learned as much, if not more, than I contributed through this process. So we hope that you also enjoy your work with StarTalk programs this summer. I hope that our goals for our shared time today were met, and that you feel comfortable explaining the purpose of the site visit, describing your role as a site visitor, stating how the site visit look-fors are used to identify priority areas for feedback, and then have an awareness of what you need to do to prepare for the site visit and how to find program documents for review. I want to be sure to dedicate time to taking any questions you might have. If you click on the Q&A file, there's an option there for you to be able to type a question, or you can unmute your mic and share a question orally. And if you have no questions, I just want to thank you so much for your valuable time this afternoon. You can also feel free to follow up with an email directly to me or to StarTalk Central at nflc.umd.edu. But we wish you a wonderful StarTalk program site visit summer. Oh, and I see I have a question coming in. Let's take a look. Oh, thank you, Dessa. I don't know if everyone can see that, but the question, she just appreciated the information shared. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon, all. Farewell.